Print, email, Facebook, Twitter. More. The Field Revisited, National Gallery of Victoria's groundbreaking 1968 exhibition of abstract art is restaged. Picture this: a 2-meter square canvas covered in white paint. At first glance, and from afar, it might look as if the artist has neglected to finish their work. It's only up close that the detail emerges: circles, cut through with diagonal crosses, made from cotton thread. It was 1968, and visitors to the inaugural exhibition at the new National Gallery of Victoria, NGV, premises on St Kilda Road didn't quite know what to make of Robert Hunter's work. "I would like to be impressed and carried away, but all I could see was an exercise in paint," one visitor wrote to the Herald. "I still maintain that this is not enough. I do not consider he has produced great art, but only an interesting experiment." Other members of the public defended the works. Doug Purnell wrote to the Herald, "Hunter is able to capture the imagination and the feeling of the viewer with the quality of design and subtlety of color, change in his painting." Hunter would go on to create these white paintings for the next 3 decades. A survey of his work is showing at NGV Australia, Federation Square, until August 26. At just 21 years of age in 1968, Hunter was the youngest of 40 artists in NGV's exhibition, The Field. His painting was one of 74 abstract sculpture and colour field paintings, including works by then unknown artists Sidney Ball, Robert Jacks, Peter Booth and Janet Dawson, all of whom were rejecting the tradition of figurative art in favour of abstraction. At the time, the Herald's art critic, Alan McCulloch, was worried that if this style caught on it would soon bring art itself to an end. But this wasn't the end of art, it was a beginning, for the young artists in the show and also for the NGV, which embraced a brave new world of international avant-garde art. In a way, the legacy of the Field is contemporary art. Art historian and Melbourne University Professor Ian McLean says, "You could almost pick any artist today and you could find echoes of the Field or what the Field stands for in their work. It's had a very broad legacy." To celebrate the 50th anniversary of its opening, NGV has restaged the Field, bringing almost all of the works back together to give audiences the chance to experience one of the most influential exhibitions in Australian art history. What was the Field? Biggest Australian artists of the time, such as Sidney Nolan, Arthur Boyd and John Brack, were all conspicuously absent from the 1968 exhibition. Instead, curators John Stringer and Brian Finemore selected works by young and emerging contemporary artists. 18 of the 40 artists included were under the age of 30, and some had never had a solo show. These young artists were rejecting the conservatism of the Australian art scene and turning away from Europe, looking instead to the avant-garde art coming out of New York. So were the curators, inspired by what he'd seen at Andy Warhol's factory. Stringer had fitted out the exhibition with silver foil-covered walls and geometric light fittings. It was the first instance of a design show at the NGV. What is colour field painting? Colour field painting is a style of abstract expressionism that originated in New York City in the 1940s, through artists Mark Rothko and Barnett Newman, among others. It's characterized by large areas of flat, even color, says Beckett Rosenthal's, curator of the Field Revisited. The artworks are not representational or figurative, with no clear foreground or background. In the 1950s and 1960s the style spread to the UK, Canada and Australia. It was during this time that you began to see elements like stripes and geometric patterns, and references to the landscape and the natural world, begin to emerge in the paintings. Rosenthal says, breaking free from the traditional canvas. One of the works brought back as part of the Field Revisited is Rollerscape 2, by Archibald Prize winner Janet Dawson, which Rosenthal describes as an explosion of the landscape from the canvas. "I was getting very annoyed with the square," Dawson recalls, "because every time you see a painting in a square or a rectangle, you're actually subliminally reminded of human structures, such as doors, windows, or cupboards. I felt that the image should try to get away from this. The idea of rollerscape is that when you escape from the city and go out to the country rolls around you as you walk or drive. So this painting was an expression of a painting trying to escape from the prison of the square." Dawson was not the only artist fed up with the square, says Rosenthal. "You really had the artists experimenting. The work did not need to be confined to the traditional canvas shape of the rectangle square. There were quite a lot of differently shaped canvases, and multiple canvases." What did the art world make of the Field? It's fair to say the field is one of the most talked about exhibitions in Australian art history, says Rosenthal's. Before the exhibition even opened, the Herald's Alan McCulloch wrote, "Nobody blames the youthful participants in the field exhibition. The youngest is 20, but the exhibition is likely to do them more harm than good. It is like sending the college athletic team to represent Australia at the Olympics." More detractors piled on at the show's opening. Leonard French, the artist responsible for NGV International's stained glass ceiling, is reported by The Age as saying, "The exhibition goes with a bang, but there is complete void beyond. Its content is nil." Rudy Coman, a prominent Sydney art dealer, also spoke to The Age. "One expects art to be adventurous and exciting. This is neither. The idiom is well known. The colors, sick, look tired and the design slack." The exhibition's American roots were heavily criticized. The show did have its fans, however. The Age's art critic, Patrick McCoy, who later became the director of the NGV, was a huge fan and advocate of the exhibition, says Rosenthal's. So it was McCoy versus McCulloch, the Herald versus the Age. After the exhibition opened, you've got this dialogue between the two newspapers, Rosenthal says. Australian art went global. Curators Stringer and Finemore had set out to define an entire direction of Australian art, which had not previously been tackled by a national institution, says Rosenthal's. That direction was international. This worried critics like McCulloch, says Rosenthal's. He saw the exhibition as a threat to national identity, and was quite concerned by the exhibition and what it meant for Australian art. But, as McLean points out, the field's artists weren't interested in that question of what is national/Australian art. Art became much more global. Brave New World. The field ushered in a new kind of art, but it also announced the arrival of a different kind of institution, really challenged what people saw the role of the NGV to be, Rosenthal says. The institution emerged as a place where expectations could be challenged. McLean agrees, the field was groundbreaking for Australia, for the institution of the art world, and for the crusty old place that the NGV was. It announced that the NGV was stepping away from the past into something new, into the future. They were announcing a brave new world. This paralleled broader changes in Australia, which a year earlier had passed the referendum on Aboriginal voting rights, and 4 years later would elect Gough Whitlam as Prime Minister. Australia becomes an Aboriginal place, a multicultural place. In this period, there was a whole new groundswell of thought. Everything had changed, McLean says. McLean sees another important innovation in the field. The way you moved through the exhibition was as if you're walking through a field, through the space. This was a significant departure from the way art had been exhibited before, simply hung on a wall and observed. It marked the beginning of installation art. The field revisited. For the 50th anniversary of the field, the NGV have reunited 62 out of the 74 original works from the exhibition, though some of the pieces are recreations. They've also brought back the silver foil walls and geometric light fittings of the original exhibition design. Revisiting the works all these years later, original field artist Janet Dawson observed, "The work has settled in a way that's very rewarding for me as an artist. It looks extraordinary." Although it was visionary, the field had one glaring blind spot. Dawson was one of only 3 women in an exhibition of 40 artists. It was a male-dominated style, but this is not reflective of what women were producing, Rosenthal says. As a corrective to that gap, the NGV will soon unveil an accompanying gallery space with works by other women, such as Virginia Cupridge and Leslie Dumbrell, who were working in a similar style at the time. The field revisited is on display at NGV Australia at Federation Square until August 26. Print, email, Facebook, Twitter.